Oh, hey, Cotton, you want a little bit of gin? Oh, no thanks. I'm trying to stay dry for the holidays. Well, he could probably help you out with that. He does do a very good job of absorbing temperatures. He? Jin Dahaad. Oh, yes, right, of course. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, last night we had the release of our final arch-tempered apex monster for Monster Hunter Wilds, Jin Dahaad, and he is an absolute treat. While I generally stay blind to Monster Hunter updates and stuff ahead of time, it was pretty easy to guess that this was coming, and yet I am still so pleasantly surprised by this fight. It is absolutely an increase in difficulty over his normal version, not even just his numbers, because of course his numbers have been boosted a fair bit as far as how much damage he does and how much health he has, but his new attacks, his new combos that he can use with his old attacks, and the just sort of general feel of the fight is way more intense. That said, I'm a big fan of the fight, and today we're going to break down everything that you need to know about it, from the new attacks that are important to be aware of and recognize so that you can avoid them hurting you, to just the general fight change-ups, to tips and tricks that make the fight easier, especially for people who never fought a whole lot of regular Jin Dahaad, and he also of course has some equipment released alongside him, and we'll talk about all the things that he unlocks and how they are in a sort of general sense. Nothing too in-depth, but just rating how good I think they are overall. Starting off then, let's get into what is new with arch-tempered Jin Dahaad. On a base level, he is enraged for most of the fight. Not literally 100% of the time, but it is super easy to get him enraged, and then he stays enraged for an incredibly long duration, which immediately means things like the agitator skill are even better against him than they normally would be, but also things like the new gogmazios set bonus for elemental builds too, if you're gonna be using those anyways. Past the literal state changes then, he's just sort of way more aggressive throughout the fight in general. His time spent recovering between attacks feels shorter, which means that there are less opportunities to hit the monster than the normal fight as well. Couple of other things, his Nova attack, the one where he expels loads of ice damage, you need to hide unless you have insane defensive stats to just sort of stat check it with, or if you have guard up on a guard weapon you can also do that, but this attack is faster with arch-tempered Jin Dahaad than it is with regular Jin Dahaad. On the left here is a clip that I have just tanking this attack fully from regular Jin ages back. On the right is a clip of the same attack from arch-tempered Jin Dahaad. Regular Jin takes about 16 seconds from start to finish for the animation to start dealing damage. Arch-tempered Jin Dahaad takes around 13.5 to 14 seconds, so it's somewhere around 2 to 2.5 seconds faster than normal Jin, which is an appreciable difference, but not like crazy quicker. The other thing worth mentioning is his health pool. The big wall that you can drop on him in the third phase and the boulders that you can drop on him as well all do percent damage, just so you know how we work these things out, and we already knew the HP numbers for 9-star, 5-star tempered Jin Dahaad, which is the most interesting comparison to make here. 9-star, 5-star Jin Dahaad's HP variance in solo hunts goes from around 51,000 to 55,000 health, so his average health is around 53,000. Arch-tempered Jin Dahaad seems to have somewhere in the range of 63,000 health, which is right around a 20% increase over 9-star, 5-star, so that just to say he is actually a decent bit tankier as well. That said, let's talk about the new moves, changed moves, and new combos worth knowing about too. I won't mention literally everything, but all of the things that could easily trip you up and possibly lead to a cart. First one that I want to really point out is this super quick beam swipe, where he fires a frost breath while swinging his head sideways. He always lifts his head up like this before he blasts his breath off, but before you recognize that telegraph, it can feel extremely sudden, and it can cause you a lot of pain. Usually he will only do this breath attack once, but he can on occasion do 2 sweeping breaths in a row, sweeping back across from the other direction the second time. This is also a common thing that they've done to a lot of his more standard attacks. A number of the things that he used to only do once in the base fight, he will now do twice in a row. Like his icy paw slam in the base version of the fight, he would alternate paw slams, but now he can do the same paw twice in a row. His forward charge attack, he can do that twice in a row, but most notably his big belly slam attack he does after getting up on his hind legs, he will now pretty consistently do that one twice in a row the vast majority of the time, which makes it feel a little bit almost duna-ish, and honestly it's quite a dangerous attack if you panic after the first one, but just get some distance from him and then Superman dive and you should be totally fine. Another properly branded new attack is this one where he sort of coils up vertically and then launches off a tail sweep that covers a massive area around him. In his original fight, pretty much the only dangers when you stood behind him were very low motion tail sweeps and an ice expulsion from his crotch area, but this attack immediately makes him more dangerous from all angles because it does a lot of damage in a lot of places and you don't want to get caught out by it. This is another attack with a super long telegraph wind up before it happens though, so if you learn to recognize this animation, you can just straight up run out of range of it before the tail swipe actually goes off to begin with. Then just a few more important major move changes as well. His chest ice blast explosion that he sometimes does used to be a really good opportunity to damage him because you could run out of range before the attack happened, then run back in as soon as he finished the animation and start hitting him. But now when he does the big ice explosions, they actually create like a little ice storm or vortex of sorts that continually applies the full frostbite freeze around you to the ground underneath him, and you get the frostbite debuff if you step in it. So if you treat this attack the same way that you did in his base fight, you'll get trapped and potentially die in the aftermath of doing so. Another change is this attack where he climbs up on a pillar in phase 3 and 4, he hops up, he fires off a number of ice breaths down at you from above, and this used to be one of his most easily dodgeable attacks because you could just look up and avoid the directions he was aiming at, but now there is an extra component to this where he will spawn ice crystals that form out of the ground as he does this. They seem to spawn somewhat randomly around the area he's above, not literally from the breath itself, and they block you physically if you try to walk into them after they are placed. Essentially, this is just to make it so that you do have to pay some attention to the floor while he's doing the breath. It's not that much worth. If you keep moving, you're probably fine, but it is an extra thing to think about. Then another one that I want to call out is his sort of refreeze charging up attack that he will do in later stages of the fight, where he just pulses frostbite and ice damage around him for a few seconds. This was always a very potentially dangerous attack, but the arch-tempered version of it has way larger range if you try to leave it positionally, and it also makes these same ice crystals come up from the ground as the previous attack that we talked about, so he can try to deal extra damage from those ones coming out from below, or they can physically block you when you're trying to leave as well. Also, there is now ice crystals attached to one of his body slams, and more importantly, the ice crystals will show up at the very start of his Nova attack as well, which can knock you around and make it a bit tougher to get to a boulder of safety before it goes off. That covers the new stuff of note to watch out for and how to know when it's coming, so let's talk about how to make the fight easier in a more general sense. Upgrade your armor as much as you can, including transcending pieces if possible, as that does give them a higher defense limit, which will help you survive more. If you have spare 1-slot sockets and want some more survivability, ice resistance is always an option, but I personally put a lot higher value into things like Divine Blessing and Recovery Up, which are just generally used utility skills. As well, it is pretty much mandatory of me to mention the existence of the Cleanser item. These will get you out of frostbite if you get stuck to the ground, and it does it much faster than the natural escape timer, of course, so bring a stack of these with you, and it might prevent some carts like these ones, where I did not have a cleanser ready, and I got absolutely rinsed before I could move, so bring cleansers to avoid getting comboed like this. As well, weapons with shields or guard functions seem to do really quite well against him, like you can just guard pretty much everything and handle it way better than someone who has to actively dodge attacks, and you could also consider using the guard up skill for this fight too. Not only does guard up allow you to block the Nova attack itself, but ranks of guard up now reduce chip damage taken from any guarded attack, so if you're going to go with a guard heavy playstyle, you're going to guard most of his attacks, it is a big consideration for a monster that can do this much damage. Past that, Jin's elemental weakness is fire, so fire weapon builds are of course quite decent, though his element hit zones themselves aren't crazy high, so I'd actually generally recommend using a raw attack focused build with a touch of fire element on top, unless you're using a weapon where element is just king in every situation regardless, in which case yeah, go for fire element. As for where to actually hit him, his weakest spots are the places with ice plates. These are his head, his tail, his lower back, and his upper back. The upper back ice plates specifically are super duper resistant to damage until the other 3 plates are broken through. So generally speaking, I'd say focus on the head and tail for damage, unless he is knocked down, in which case focus on the lower back ice plate. All of these spots become weak points during knockdown, so you can even get free bonus part damage and combo into focus strikes with whatever those actually lead you to. So always try to get these areas during downs and the weak points too, even if it is right at the end of the down. On top of them being good damage spots as well, each ice plate that you break will lower the power of the Nova attack itself. And if you break all 4 of the ice plates, I believe it prevents him from doing Nova attacks just full stop, so ice plates are a big thing to focus on to make the fight easier. Other notes, severing his tail will make the gigantic tail sweep attack, the new one, obviously much less dangerous because it will cover less ground when he does it, and breaking any of his legs, front legs or back legs, will cause a knockdown, so aiming for those is not a bad idea either, especially as they still do take decent damage. As well, you want to make sure that you take advantage of the arena itself. There's nothing much going on in the first area, but in the second area of the fight, you can aggravate the swarm of Hirabami and get them to come down and harass Jin Dahaad a little bit for some free environmental damage, and there is also a couple of boulders hanging around in this area in the same zone, so you can drop that on his head for some bonus damage too. In phase 3, there are a few things that you can do, do. There is the wall on the side here that you can pull on with your slinger and drop on top of Jin for a big pile of damage and a free knockdown. There is a part of this phase, as well as phase 4, where Jin will climb up onto a pillar like this, and then he will blast down some ice beams while ice crystals pop out of the floor, and after he's done a few, you can then slinger up to the pillar to break it, pull him down for damage and a free knockdown. The other thing that applies to both phase 3 and 4 is that there are boulders all around the ceiling of the arena. You can use these to deal damage, but they are also your main protection from his big supernova attack that he does, because they are what you can use to physically block it. Generally, Jin will only do that attack once in phase 3 and up to twice in phase 4. I've never seen more than twice, so feel free to use some of the boulders for damage, but always keep at least a couple around for the Nova attacks just in case. It is worth noting though, for phase 4 specifically, that the boulders do respawn eventually, so if you drop a few boulders at the start, those will probably be back before the time the second Nova attack would happen, if a second Nova happened. One final thing worth noting is that in phase 3 and 4, Jin Dahaad can climb up a wall a little bit, and if he does start climbing a wall to the point where all of his feet are off the ground, if you use a flash pod on him, and you can actually knock him off of the wall by doing this and get a free down like you would with a flying monster. It's essentially the same interaction. And with that, you know how to beat Arch-Tempered Jin Dahaad, so what do you get for doing so? The unique reward is Jin Dahaad Gamma tickets, which can do a number of things for you. First and foremost, you can craft the Gamma armor set from the monster. This contributes to the Lord Soul group bonus, which immediately means that it has a head start in terms of being a viable armor set in high tier meta builds. The armor pieces in general have relatively low amounts of level 3 slot sockets, but the chest piece is 2 agitator and 2 2-slot sockets, which is a great piece of armor. The waist is 3 agitator and a 1-slot socket, which is another great piece of armor. The legs are 2 weakness exploit, 1 foray, and a 2-slot socket as well, which isn't incredible but is far from bad and could still fit in some builds. And the gloves, if you're going to be using an element focused build, these are 3 coalescence and a 2-slot socket, which is not a bad piece at all. The helmet, however, only really applies if you want to build around foray, which is a very niche skill in pretty much any situation. All of these armor pieces also come with the Jin Dahaad set bonus on them too, Binding Counter, and this was actually buffed in the patch that came with Title Update 4. After you recover from the webbed status, frostblight status, pin attacks, or from power clashes if you are using a guard weapon, you get 25 bonus attack from the 2-set bonus, or 50 bonus attack for the 4-set bonus, which are incredibly high amounts for a set bonus, but of course the trigger condition won't happen all that often. Even the ideal trigger condition being the power clash, you likely aren't going to have happen more than a few times per hunt, even if you really focus on guarding as many attacks as possible. That said, before the patch, the duration of this effect was 60 seconds, it is now 90 seconds, which is notably better, and that means in some niche matchups, such as something like Lance, which lives and dies by guarding, against specifically monsters that have power clashes, as not all of them do, this set bonus definitely does have potential. All that to say, the gear is super solid, and a number of the armor pieces may very well end up in meta sets, depending on your weapon. Past that, the Gamma ticket can also craft a few more things too. First are some more talismans, specifically some upgrades to talisman that we already have, and some really good ones too. You can get the Phoenix Charm 3, which is the 3 ranks of Coalescence Charm. This is an upgrade because we could only do 2 ranks previously, and this is nice for any elemental builds, but it's not the biggest deal because Coalescence is a 2-slot skill instead of being a 3-slot skill. That said, there is a 3-slot skill talisman that was upgraded, and it's Agitator of all things. We now have a 3-rank Agitator charm without any RNG involved to get it either, and this is just absolutely a massive deal. It makes RNG talismans far less important because a 3-rank Agitator charm is worth using in pretty much any build, and in a lot of builds it might even end up being more damage than the RNG talisman could get you. So this is very much going to power creep RNG talismans a bit. That said, there is also one more thing that you can get, which is Arch-Tempered Jin Dahaad Palico equipment as well for higher stats and the same aesthetic if you do want to have that as well. That just about does it for today then everyone, a guide to Arch-Tempered Jin Dahaad, what it changes, how to deal with it, some general tips and tricks for the fight, and then just a roundup of what equipment unlocks came alongside him as well, because I think that he is awesome, and I think that the stuff he drops is pretty awesome too. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and hopefully it helps you get through this hunt at least a little bit easier. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.